The Cleveland Guardians don't have the reputation of making the biggest splashes in the free agent market, but with one of the most exciting young teams in the MLB that just made an ALCS run, it looks like a year that the Guardians may want to upgrade some positions. So as you can probably guess, this video is not going to contain a Juan Soto rating, but let's try to group together all the offseason targets that the Guardians could feasibly go after, whether it be a trade or free agency, and let's rank them on a good old-fashioned tier list.
So let's start things off with returning free agents. And first I wanted to talk about Shane Bieber, but as I'm making this video, the news has broke that he's coming back to Cleveland, so we'll move on. Our first official entry is Alex Cobb, and his time in Cleveland wasn't very long at all. Sure, he was decent when he did pitch, but he had lots of injuries and really didn't make that great of an impact. Yes, he's getting up there in age, but he just was an all-star in 2023 for the first time after putting together a really solid career. With Cobb, I think it really comes down to what he's going to want in free agency. I'm just taking a shot in the dark, but I'm thinking if he wants more than $8 million, I think the Guardians probably will pass. And yes, the Guardians rotation isn't that strong right now. You have Bybee, Gavin Williams, Ben Lively, Joey Cantillo, and then as it stands right now, either Tristan McKenzie, Logan Allen, or Doug Nikhazy, with Bieber eventually coming back. I think Cobb would be an improvement in the rotation immediately, but I don't think the Guardians are going to be willing to spend big money for him when he's such a risky player, just with the injuries and age. He'd be solid, but not a top priority by any means. I'm giving him a C. Then I guess with Bieber, Boyd, and Hedges already signed, the only other returning free agent is Carlos Carrasco. And let's be honest, he's all but retired at this point. He threw out a ceremonial first pitch in the ALDS, and he really didn't pitch that much during the season as it was. Seems to be a really good locker room guy. I'm sure they would love to have him back in some capacity, but probably not as a player. D tier. Now, as we move on to regular free agents, we have somewhat of a return here for Carlos Santana. It's probably been the most rumored free agent signing for the Guardians this offseason, as Andre Knott, the sideline reporter, has said that he spoke with Carlos on the matter. And with David Fry set to miss about half the season, it makes a lot of sense. And with an impending Josh Naylor trade, this makes even more sense for the Guardians. He would step into that DH first baseman role that, under those circumstances, only Manzardo would occupy. And depending on what David Fry is capable of, post-injury, defensively-wise, Santana could really have an everyday slot in the lineup for the entire year. I like this a lot. I'm giving Carlos Santana an A tier. Jurickson Profar is probably going to be one of the hottest names on the market this winter. But with him being a top prospect that's just making his breakout season at 31 years old, maybe some red flags are waived and teams really don't offer him the amount of money that he's expecting. And maybe that's a gap for the Guardians to swoop in and get him. He's got lots of positional versatility, and he had an amazing year last year in San Diego. Definitely someone I would love to see in a Guardians uniform, but I don't see it all that realistic, so I'm giving it a C. Here's my official pitch for Roki Sasaki to become the next Cleveland Guardian. First off, the Guardians can pay him $6.9 million, which is pretty much the second most amount of money he could be paid. Secondly, the Guardians have elite pitching development. This would be a great move for his career, as he would have the opportunity to learn with some of the best pitching coaches in America. Finally, he would be on a competing team right out the gates. I've read that he really cares about being competitive, and the Guardians have been one of the best teams across the past decade. It's a great match. Would I like this to happen? Yes. Do I think it makes a lot of sense for it to happen? Yes. Do I think it's going to happen? No. So I'm giving it a C. Max Fried, great pitcher. He's going to get way too much money for Cleveland to even compete. F. Willy Adames, I thought maybe he would get undersold on the market, but looks like he's the premier shortstop option, and he's going to get a lot of money wherever he goes, probably to the Yankees. F. The signing of Anthony Santander for the Cleveland Guardians would be a pseudo homecoming move, as he was plucked from the Guardians farm system in the Rule 5 draft once upon a time. And the Guardians have said they are evaluating the outfield market. And I am of the opinion that if they are going to make a signing in the outfield, they got to go big. Because if you're going to hold back guys like DeLauder and John Kenzie Noel, you got to make a big splash to make it worth doing it. I think Santander would be that guy. He's a big power threat, and he would make the lineup immediately better. Only problem is I don't know how much money he's going to get and if the Guardians are going to be able to match that. So I'm giving it a B. Jock Peterson is someone that has been rumored to go to Cleveland many times in the past, it seems like. But for one reason or the other, it just hasn't happened. And it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen again. The dude can hit, that's no question, but he's pretty much a left-handed platoon DH at this point. And a guy like Santana being a switch hitter would give you a little bit more versatility. He's coming off a really good year, so somebody's going to pay him, and it's just not worth it for the Guardians. D. Tyler O'Neill is another big power guy, and he's probably even a better hitter than Anthony Santander, despite him only being a righty. But I think Santander is going to get a little bit more money because O'Neill has injury concerns as well as some clubhouse concerns. He kind of got exorcised from St. Louis for clubhouse issues. So that's really not great news for O'Neill, but it is good news for the Guardians because he probably won't get as much money as really what his play would suggest. Now, with that being said, I don't really know if he's going to even still be in the Guardians' price range. He still might be priced out. But if they want to pony up and go big, I think Tyler O'Neill is the guy to go for. And I think that he is probably the best outfielder on the market for the Guardians, so I'm giving him an S. Gleyber Torres just owned the Guardians in the playoffs, but he's going to get a lot of money, and quite honestly, I'd rather have Andres Jimenez and Brian Rocchio up the middle anyways, so I'm giving him an F. Colin Rea could be an intriguing, cheap stopgap kind of starter while you wait for Shane Bieber to come back. If you don't trust Mackenzie Allen or Nikhazy to step up in that meantime, the only problem is he's really not that great. But hey, neither was Ben Lively, and they turned him into something. So, hey, maybe it's worth a shot. See. Jose Quintana is a journeyman's journeyman at this point, and he's a bit older, but I think that he's got a lot left in the tank. The only problem is I think that probably some other teams think that he's got a lot left in the tank too. Probably not going to get him at a good deal, so if I'm the Guardians, I'm out. D tier. Trevor Williams had a career year last year in Washington, but despite the underlying numbers looking pretty good, I just don't believe it. It might be the smaller sample size, but I just think that this might be a flash in the pan, and I'd be wary giving him the money that he's probably going to get. And it really doesn't seem like a move that the Guardians would make, so I'm giving him an F. Max Scherzer, big name, probably going to get a big contract. I mean, he could pull a Kerry Wood, come to Cleveland, but I think that he's probably a little bit better than Kerry Wood was when he came to Cleveland, so I don't think it's going to happen. Although it would be a lot of fun, I think he would be better suited to go to Detroit, D tier. Michael Lorenzen's pitched out of the bullpen and as a starter, but I think that honestly he's probably more suited to come out of the bullpen. I don't think the Guardians need any bullpen help, so I'm kind of out on him. Although he would be fun because he's got some swag. D tier again. JD Martinez has owned Cleveland in the past, and it would be great to have him in the Cleveland dugout. He seems to value winning a lot. The Guardians can give that to him. Maybe he'd be open to a move to Cleveland. And he's probably not going to get the biggest contract at his age. I view him as a very solid backup for the Carlos Santana plan if that falls through. A tier. John Means, sure, look, I know his expected stats aren't that great, and he's battled with countless injuries. But something tells me if you put him in the Cleveland Guardians pitching lab, he'd be Matthew Boyd, but better. I don't think that he's going to have the biggest market in free agency, and I think that the Guardians could really pick him up and make him into a very solid starting pitcher. Like, I know it's a little risky, but I would make him a top priority this season. S tier. Max Kepler, an ultimate Cleveland Guardians destroyer. But it really comes down to, would you rather have Kepler or DeLauder out in right field? And I'm leaning towards DeLauder. I mean, sure, yeah, it would be nice not to face him, but hopefully he just goes to the NL and you don't have to see him anymore. Personally, I don't think it's worth the money. Use it elsewhere. But I wouldn't be too mad with it, so C. I liked Cal Quantrill a lot when he was in Cleveland. They traded him to the Rockies, and he had some good moments, but he really fell off at the end. He ended up getting non-tendered. I wouldn't be mad at having him back as a stopgap, cheap option, B tier. Yohan Moncada, yeah, he was a top prospect at one point, but I really don't think he's that great, and I don't see a position for him at all with the Guardians. I guess maybe second base if you move Andres over to shortstop, but I don't like it at all. F tier. Spencer Turnbull is a pitcher that I really liked when he was in Detroit. And as far as stopgap, cheap starting rotation options, I think that he might be my favorite of the bunch. He's got a really nasty sweeper, and usually when the Guardians find a pitcher that has one really standout type of trait, they can capitalize on that. I could see him being a very solid starting pitcher, so A tier.
So as you can probably tell, a lot of things have changed. This list isn't really that up to date anymore. It took me a little bit longer to make this video than I was expecting. Juan Soto's a Met. Alex Cobb is a Tiger. and I got a new couch. What are you going to do about it? Turn off the video. That's the only thing you can do, but you've made it this far, so you might as well just stick around and watch the trade targets that I have for the Guardians. And if you're enjoying this video, drop a like. Also, I have seen some people been floating around Teoscar Hernandez rumors with the Dodgers going out and signing Michael Conforto. I really don't think that's going to be in the Guardians' price range. I think that he'll probably end up going to a bigger market team. But if we're going to give him a grade, he would be pretty nice to be that right fielder. I'll give it a D to a C, maybe. But let's get into those trades.
Garrett Crochet is probably the hottest commodity on the trade market this offseason, and he's on a division rival for the Cleveland Guardians. He would be extremely hard for them to get. With that being said, he would be an ace-level pitcher for a team that needs a starting pitcher or two. But overall, the price that they would have to pay for Garrett Crochet, along with concerns with his ability to have a large workload and pitch deep into a season, is leading me to believe that this is not going to happen. As much as I would like to see Garrett Crochet in a Guardians uniform, I'm going to have to give this one a D. Next up, we have former Cy Young Award winner Sandy Alcantara. Now, he missed all of last season due to injuries, but I still believe that he is one of the premier pitchers in the MLB. The Guardians have shown in the past that they're not afraid of pitching injuries, and that's not something that's going to scare them away from bringing in a good pitcher. You look at Alex Cobb and Matthew Boyd as mid-season acquisitions last year, and then again Shane Bieber bringing him back this year. And with that injury, you might be able to get a little bit of a discount in a trade for Sandy Alcantara. If the Guardians could swoop in and get a deal done for Sandy here while giving up maybe only one real blue chip prospect, I think that that would be the perfect move to make. Sandy has proven to be a workhorse in the past, and I think you plug him into a Guardians rotation, get him working with all the coaching staff and medical staff here, I think you got an ace on your hands. This is a no doubt S tier. Jameson Taillon has been a good pitcher for a while, but he's never really been one of my top pitchers in the MLB. He drastically outperformed his expected stats last year, and with the Guardians defense, there's no reason that he couldn't do that again in Cleveland, but he really doesn't strike me as a top option for trade. While he would definitely be a quality arm in the rotation, he's not someone that really gets me excited. If it's a good deal, maybe you swing it. B tier. Then how about another homecoming? Yandy Diaz has been floating around the trade market this offseason, and he's a pretty good player. And like Carlos Santana, I think that a lot of this has to do with if Josh Naylor is traded. And even in those circumstances, I'd rather have a guy like Carlos Santana who's proven to be a little bit more consistent than Yandy Diaz and also would just be a free agent. You wouldn't have to give up anything to get him. And even still, if you were going to go out and get Diaz, his contract is only 1 year longer than Josh Naylor's. So you're going to have to pay him anyways too. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. D tier. Jesus Luzardo is another power pitcher from the Marlins who battled injury last year. The difference here between him and Sandy Alcantara is that Jesus Luzardo is just really not as good. Maybe you're banking on getting him for a cheaper price and then trying to unlock some of that untapped potential that he's shown throughout his career. It's really not the home run that a Sandy Alcantara trade would be, but it's a good consolation prize. A tier. I said Crochet was probably the top prize on the trade market, but the best batter on the trade market is also from Chicago, and that would be Cody Bellinger. The Cubs have been aggressively shopping him this offseason, which is odd because he's proven to be a bit of a yo-yo kind of guy, and he had a bad year last year. He's due for a good year this year. But with that being said, he really doesn't present you anything that much differently than what Josh Naylor does, and he's due a lot of money. If you're dumping Naylor for salary and avoiding paying him, I don't really see the rationale in going out and getting Bellinger. I think if you're going to go big for a starting pitcher. Realistically wise, I just don't see this deal getting done at all. I mean, I guess if you trade Naylor, you got some more money to spend. You think Bellinger's the guy to get you over the hump, but I think it's a D tier. I had seen that Wilyer Abreu was on the trade block for the Red Sox, and he's quite an exciting young player. Now, at this point, they lost out on the Juan Soto sweepstakes, and also Tyler O'Neill is an Oriole. So I'm not really thinking that Wilyer Abreu is going to be uber available. But if I'm the Guardians, I got to give him a call. This is a young right fielder who shown good contact and to be a really good defender. I think he fits what the Guardians are trying to do really well. It's a C tier, but I would really like to have him on the team. Speaking of fitting in with the Guardians really well, we have Luis Arias, who is the contact king. Lots of mutual respect between him and Steven Kwan. The problem with Luis Arias is that he's really just not a good defender. I guess you could put him in that DH slot, but really what got the Guardians deep into the playoffs this year was power. I think that they're going to try to have some more power in the lineup this year. Luis Arias, F tier. Chas McCormick did not have a good year last year by any means, but he's proven to be a good platoon option in the outfield against lefties in past years. The thing is here, though, I really don't see what Chas McCormick gives you that Lane Thomas doesn't. Could be an intriguing buy low opportunity, but I'm going to have to pass. D tier. I think Brent Rooker would be a perfect bat to add to a Guardians lineup, but it's becoming more and more evident that the A's are not willing to give him up for anything other than a king's ransom. Don't see this happening. F tier. Bo Bichette is a big name shortstop, and with big name shortstops, you're going to have to give up a lot in a trade for them. The problem is, he really didn't even have a better year than Brian Rocchio last year. I am completely out on this. I do not want them to trade for Bo Bichette at all. F tier. With a crowded Baltimore outfield, it looks like Cedric Mullins may be available. And I think the Guardians got to give him a call. He's a very valuable player, and he's shown that for a few years at this point. You could slot him into center field in a platoon, or the full-time center fielder if you move Lane Thomas to right field, or move on from him completely. The one issue I see with this trade is that Cedric Mullins is a free agent in 2026, and it's been rumored that the Guardians are going to move on from Lane Thomas, presumably because they didn't want to pay his upcoming contract when he's a free agent in 2026. So if those rumors are true, and I kind of believe them, this trade just doesn't make a lot of sense as much as I would like it to happen, as it would be very exciting. So I'm giving it a C tier. My favorite fit for the Cleveland Guardians in terms of a bat this offseason is Seiya Suzuki. He plays right field. He's a very solid player. I think if you're afraid of playing those young guys in right field, Seiya Suzuki presents someone that can be an immediate impact guy and be an everyday right fielder. Even if you want to move DeLauder over to center and platoon him with Lane Thomas. Forget the details. Seiya Suzuki would make the Guardians better. The Cubs have been, like Bellinger, aggressively shopping him around, reportedly. So maybe the Guardians take advantage of that. They don't give up too much in a trade and grab one of the better outfielders from around the league. S tier. Also, if they trade for Suzuki and also sign Sasaki, they could go 2 for 1 on an interpreter, save a lot of money. Send this to Dolan. Now I'm going to talk about some guys that are reportedly on the trade block for the Guardians, starting off with Josh Naylor, and I'm not really opposed to this trade. He was downright horrendous in the playoffs. And with the Guardians really operating on a shoestring budget, they can't really afford to have someone be one of their top earners and also very streaky. And I know what you're thinking, Jose Ramirez kind of has that problem too, but he's Jose Ramirez, you got to keep him. I think we all see the writing on the wall. You're not going to re-sign Naylor. He's just going to get too much money than he's worth to this franchise. And in a perfect world, I would love the Guardians to sign other players so Naylor's streakiness isn't an end-all be-all for the team and it doesn't really just stop them. But if we're being honest with ourselves, that's not going to happen. The Guardians just need to be as smart as possible with their investments. I don't think Naylor is the best investment for this team. And you know, you look around, you think maybe we can get something for him. Wow, we can. He came off a really good regular season last year. I don't think it's a horrible idea. B tier. And I mean, a lot of the same rationale exists for Lane Thomas too. A streaky hitter coming up for a contract. But the reason I'm not so hot on a trade of Lane Thomas is, one, you're really not going to get as much for him as you would for Josh Naylor. And two, I don't think that he's going to demand as much money in free agency as Josh Naylor. And I guess also three, if he walks in free agency, I don't think it would be as big as a deal as losing Josh Naylor for nothing. So the Lane Thomas decision really isn't as high stakes as the Josh Naylor one. So something tells me that it might be worth it just to hold on to him for a year, let him walk in free agency rather than trading him and then trying to replace him like you would have to with Josh Naylor. The scenario that I would maybe like a Lane Thomas trade is if DeLauder is playing out of his mind in spring training. He's looking like he's going to be your center fielder of the future. John Kenzie Noel looking like he deserves everyday opportunities in right field. And then David Fry coming back, maybe he mans down that DH spot. You might look around and say, hey, there's no spot for Lane Thomas on this team other than pinch runner. And under those circumstances, I completely understand the trade, but I'm not too keen on it right now. So D tier. So those are really all the rumors I have seen for the Cleveland Guardians this offseason in one tier list. Let me know what you guys think. Who did I give the wrong grade to? Who did I miss? Drop a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you for watching.